Grab a cup of coffee and start your Sunday with Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life features stories to inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Every Sunday morning at 9 on the Talk of New York, AM 970, The Apple. Visit CYACYL.com.
This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Our guest today is actress and author Christina Haag. Christina recently published the book Come to the Edge, which is the story of her 5-year relationship with John F. Kennedy Jr. Good morning. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Good morning.
Your book, Come to the Edge, explores young love, and it focuses on your relationship with John F. Kennedy Jr. And in the book, you paint John as a man with the capacity to love and who had an adventurous spirit. And with so much time that has passed now since his untimely death, what inspired you to write this book now?
I actually began the book quite a while ago, and it began with the feelings of grief and the memories that came back that I had thought I had forgotten after his death. And then after several years, it just kept haunting me that I needed to write about this time in my life and write about my story. And I began a while ago. I began in 2003. Certain life events, I stopped for time and then began writing again. And I wanted to understand who I was then, what we were together and what that meant. And I also wanted to pay tribute to my friend. We were friends for 10 years before we were boyfriend and girlfriend, and we met when we were 15. So it was there were the period of time from 15 to 30. They were very formative years, and I wanted to write about them.
So it was pretty much a way of healing for you during that time, and then the book just took on a life of its own?
Initially, I think it was a desire for healing, and then after that it became more than that. It became wanting to really capture that time. I'm an actress, but I had always written since I was a little girl. Really, for myself, I went to the Convent of the Sacred Heart in New York, and the nuns were always badgering us to keep journals for everything, and I ended up having boxes and boxes of them, having to do with that time period and earlier and later. And so they don't really comprise the book, but they really help me with memories.
That's a wonderful practice because you just never know when they become a treasure for you in your life.
Yeah, and I'm surprised I hadn't thrown them away. It felt so fascinating. You look at, well, it was to me, it's probably to no one else, but you look at it, you look at how your handwriting changes.
Yeah, as you mature and you experience more things, right.
And and particularly in the teenage years, how your voice just becomes utterly different. You know, you're really trying on different personalities. It was an important process for me. I live in New York and Los Angeles, and I'm an actor, but I found that I couldn't really be in the life that I had to write this book, and I moved to the East End of Long Island, to Montauk, and then later to Sag Harbor. It took me a lot longer than I thought, and I moved out there in 2007 and pretty much finished the real part of the book in 2 years. I'm very grateful for this time of stepping back and looking at this time in my life and also in remembering him. And I found that writing was a really positive thing, and it was really positive to remember John for me. And friends of his have written and said that reading it was like being with the two of you again. It was the person that they remembered, even though I was just trying to write the person that I remembered. And one friend said, it was painful at times because it reminded him of the loss he felt at his death, but it also made him see anew what a wonderful person he was, and it was good to celebrate that and remember.
You just said that you and John met when you were 15, and how did you meet, and how did your relationship blossom from that point?
Well, we met a boy from the collegiate school asked me out, and so when you're 15, well, at least in the 70s, they don't arrive on their own. They arrive like with 5 other guys.
That's right.
And was it still like that? I don't know.
I don't think so, Christina.
And they had like puffy down jackets and frisbees, and the guy I liked said, "Oh, we're going to Kennedy's house to my father. His mother's home." Of course, his mother wasn't home, and the apartment was dark, and we snuck into the dining room, and there were other boys there and girls on one side of the room. I didn't know anyone. And the girls just sat there, and we watched the boys throw water balloons out the window and Noxzema bombs. And I think it was 14 stories up. It might have been 12. I'm forgetting, but one boy in particular was very excited by this, and that was John. Mm-hmm. They all loved it, but I just remember him. He didn't really speak. He just was hysterical over these Noxzema bombs.
He had that little mischievous side going on even back then.
He was very mischievous, yes, and endearing. And then we hung out that year, that was what we called it, hanging out. And we wandered through Central Park, and we went to Trader Vic's, and we went to just roam the city. But of course, when we were with John, the Secret Service was with us.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you
that. Yeah, we didn't really see them. They were rather hidden. His mother made sure that, for the most part, they weren't like bodyguards. But you would forget they were there. But when we were constantly walking across from the east side to the west side through the Rambles, a very dangerous part of Central Park, as I'm sure you know, at least at that time. But the Secret Service were with us. We didn't see them, but they were there.
Were you close with John's family at this time, or was this just the relationship with John and a group of friends?
Well, we would go, I wouldn't say I was close to his family, but I met his mother then, and she would have Christmas parties and every year, and this continued years later. There were really fun parties, and she, it was a mix of her friends and Caroline's friends and John's friends from boarding school. He later left New York and went to Andover, and so I knew her that way. But I really met her as when I was his girlfriend, which was 10 years later. I mean, I would say hello, but it was quite a different thing meeting her as his girlfriend, and I was rather nervous initially, but she was a very welcoming and generous woman and put me at ease quite quickly.
Christina, when did you and John begin your romantic relationship?
In 1985, we had gone to the same college. We'd gone to Brown University, and we were housemates in this big house on Benefit Street. And I think we were involved with other people, but we might have always had a crush on each other. When we did get together, he called it the longest courtship ever. And we were doing a play in 1985 at the Irish Arts Center on West 51st Street called Winners. It's about 2 Irish teenagers, and there was a kiss in the play. And I just remember being sort of nervous about actually rehearsing the kiss. When you're in rehearsals for a play, sometimes you just sort of avoid the kiss until it's time, and then either it's a fun thing to do or it's dreadful. But in this case, it wasn't dreadful at all. But then one night he said, I'd like to kiss you for real this time. And he was very romantic. It was an exciting time.
And that was the story that you shared in the book when you were visiting his mother's home, when you went to see the horses?
Yes, we were visiting the horses, yes. There was a technical rehearsal in the theater, so the play took place on a hill. And the director wanted to, let's rehearse outside. And we were talking about hills in Central Park and Riverside Park. And then John said, well, what about my mother's house? And she had a house in Peapack in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And he said, there's a great hill there, and we can roll down the hill. And so he sort of planned it so we went out there a night ahead. And the director, we got there late at night, and I say in the book that I think the first line of the book is, seeing the place for the first time at night gives it a kind of mystery that never leaves. And it was a very special night. There was a blue moon that night, and our director, Robin Sachs, went to sleep, and he asked me if I wanted to go feed the horses at the neighbors next door. And it was about midnight or 1 o'clock, and we fed the horses and sat under the blue moon and talked about everything.
Now, Christina, I grew up with you and John in the same time period, and I grew up
You
in.
did?
I did, and I grew up. Well, but we're not telling our age here.
We're not? Okay.
No, we're not.
Well,
And,
I've outed myself, but I won't out you.
well, are you 29 with me?
Sure I am.
But I grew up in New Jersey and in the area.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I know, I just remember growing up, John's picture was everywhere. And
Yeah.
he was completely over-scrutinized. And I remember when he didn't pass the bar exam. And that has to be traumatic. I mean, for anyone that age, to experience that in private is traumatic enough. But to have it plastered on every magazine, every newspaper, how did he feel about that? And how did he deal with all of that?
That was difficult. I actually remember my father saying to me, that my father had always said to me, "Oh, I failed the bar once," but then later my father confided to me, "Well, actually, I failed twice as well, but I didn't have it plastered everywhere." And he really felt for John. The press is just awfully mean, and but he had, for the most part, I think he had a wonderful grace with the press. I wish I had it. It was in going around and talking about the book. He really had an ability to I don't know, take himself lightly. Maybe that wasn't always true in private. I think it was painful to go through that in public. But you know what? He did pass. And he became a Manhattan DA, and then he moved on to something that was more interesting and fulfilling to him. So, good for him, and I was proud of him.
And I do know the persona that you're talking about. He did have that way of, the camera loved him, and did he get that from his mother? I would think. Well, I mean, I know his father was the same way genetically, but he did learn that elegance and that classful way to behave from his mom, wouldn't you say?
Perhaps. Perhaps you could say that. I think he learned a tremendous amount from his mom, and I say in the book that there were things that he would say like mantras, and perhaps he had learned them from his mother or his uncle or people that knew better. It's like that's the way people are going to behave, and that's just how they're going to behave, and you don't struggle against that. And it's human nature. And as at the vantage point of the age that I am now, and I think back on, I knew that it was extraordinary how he walked through life with grace then, but I really know it now. And it's not to say he wasn't human and didn't get mad sometime at the press or the challenges of his life, but he weighed things carefully, and he tread lightly.
Christina, we're going to take a break for our sponsors. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life now has a monthly free digital magazine that can be mailed to your inbox or read online at CYACYL.com. Each month, nationally recognized leaders in their fields, such as Joel Osteen, Shaun T., Tanya Brown, Ed and Deb Shapiro, Food Network's Robert Irvine, plus many others, provide the tools that you need to inspire and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. As philosopher Francis Bacon said, knowledge is power. Take the wisdom provided in the publication and apply it to your everyday life. Visit CYACYL.com for more information or to begin your free subscription. That's CYACYL.com. Welcome back to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman, and our guest today is actress and author Christina Haag. Christina recently published the book Come to the Edge, which is the story of her 5-year relationship with John F. Kennedy Jr. Christina, as with any young love, did you think that you would have ended up marrying John? Were you surprised at the chain of events and what happened with your relationship?
I think maybe at the time, we were young when we met, and maybe 30 isn't young for most people, but it was for us, and we parted, and that sometimes happens, and it wasn't for lack of feeling on either part, but that can happen in a life.
How do you think this relationship changed you?
Well, how did it change me? That's an excellent question. I think there's something I talk about in the book. John would rally me when we went hiking, and I'm not particularly athletic, but I love the outdoors, and that is something that he bolstered in me. And I think I take I think I take more risks, and I mean that in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And I embrace things more fully. And he would say something when we'd be hiking, and I can't make it, or I'd start moving slowly at the top, and he would say, coraggio. And I think of that also going through difficult challenges in my life, which are bound to happen in any life, and you just have to walk through them. I think I'm changed in that way, and also that clearly this was I have been in love after this relationship, and I was in love before, but it was very resonant for me, and the fact that I wrote about it means that this person is still with me, and I think that's a good thing. And I think that they're women, men, I don't know, they're loves we have in our life that maybe you don't marry the person, maybe they pass away, but a bit of them is going to stay in your heart, and that's really what I'm writing about, and something I think people can relate to.
And as we're told so often, everyone comes into our life for a reason, a season, or a purpose. And
true.
And he did give you wonderful lessons that you were able to incorporate into life and memories
We
to
both
treasure.
did. Yeah.
Now, we
Yes.
touched briefly on Jackie, and you write about her with such affection in the book. What was your relationship like with Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis later on?
I wish I had a quote from the book. There was, there was this sense of first, I remember the first weekend, and there was a little bit of wariness, but slowly it would, not that slowly, but at some point that summer she was giving me books, and she was always saying, "Oh, what a beautiful dress. Oh, tell me how you did your hair." And I would be dumbfounded because to me she was one of the most beautiful women in the world, and certainly the most stylish, and she was so fun. She took such delight in John and in John's friends, and she loved young people. And we also, I think we had similar, we loved ballet, and we loved books, and we would talk about that, and we talk about parties and girly things, and she's very, very encouraging to me, and gave me a great deal of confidence.
Christine, I know this might be a difficult question. I remember, as I said, I was being from New Jersey. I actually lived very close to the airport where John used to fly his plane from in Caldwell. Mm-hmm. And what were you doing, or where were you the day that you heard about his untimely accident?
I was in the Berkshires, and I hadn't talked to John for a long time. But strangely, the day before, the Thursday, the day before the accident, I had such a strong sense of him. I remember I was in a supermarket in Lee, Massachusetts, and with this man that I was seeing at the time. I wasn't with him, but I was grocery shopping, and I was very much in love with this other person. So John wasn't really prominent in my mind, but he was that afternoon, and I sort of wondered why I was thinking of him, and went on with grocery shopping. But the Saturday morning, a friend called me very early. She was up early, and it had just come across the wires, and she called me. And I remember, and I've heard this from other friends of his, this dual feeling of that it was absolutely impossible. And I think you feel that way with anyone's death, even when they're 85. It's like it's not conceivable that this person's gone, but I felt that, and at the exact moment, I also felt that they wouldn't be they wouldn't be found. But yet, we waited the whole day. We waited the next day, and I kept thinking about the islands, and I write about it in the book. There are these islands off Martha's Vineyard called the Elizabeth Islands, and they're some of them are semi-uninhabited, and there's just sheep there, and I kept thinking that they would be found there, and that wasn't to happen.
Christina, John lived on the edge. Did he ever say to you that he thought he may die at a young age?
I don't think he lived on the edge. I think he was adventurous. No, he never said that to me, no.
What would you like people to remember about John?
that he was fun, curious, smart. They know he was handsome. And that he was searching, I think, for equilibrium and living his life with a grace. And I think he succeeded, and I hope that I capture that in my book.
And the name of the book is Come to the Edge, written by Christina Haag. It's a beautiful story of love between Christina and John F. Kennedy Jr. If our listeners would like to get more information, you can visit our website, CYACYL.com, which stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on our site, please read our digital magazine, listen to past shows as podcasts, sign up for our mailing list. And Christina, it was wonderful to have this opportunity to talk to you. As I said, I felt like I grew up with John, and it was important to me as well. So many of us during that time, we just felt like we knew the Kennedys and their family, and it's a beautiful story that you shared, and I thank you for sharing that. I know it couldn't have been easy for you.
Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you, Christina. This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.